Hello there, this is he who knows 10,000 games, and today I will be talking about Path of Exile. Now, this game is difficult to review as it is constantly changing and every 3 months it's different. There's a new league and sometimes it's great, and other times it's not. So it will have to be rated differently than other games. Now firstly I want to talk about the good. This game is like your dad. You will never be good enough. And it will always reward you only after you have suffered hell to reach some point of success, just enough so that you don't quit altogether. And when it does reward you, just like your dad, it will also remind you that you are still dumb as a sack of bricks by having a random mob wipe the floor with you because chaos resist. Used to be harder to get and I didn't even know about it, or that sometimes it's kinda the same thing as poison, but not really. Are you confused? Great! That's how you're supposed to feel. Now, like in every Souls game, death is your teacher. I remember when I started playing it for serious in Delve League, and as a new player I only found 3 exalted orbs, and as I didn't know what was good or bad, I couldn't trade effectively at all. I found some beans and sold them for a cow, and only later found out they were magic. After Act 5, it took me a moment to realize why I got so damn squishy all of a sudden. Resistances are a thing, and I also didn't read the text in the bottom left corner that my resistances have been lowered. Okay, lesson learned. The combat in the game feels great, though not always. Stock death animations don't feel as good, so if you're not using a herald skill or some type of an exploding mechanic, killing enemies is not as satisfying as in D3 for example. In D3, death animations depend on some of the skills you use as well as your class. I remember when I did my first playthrough with a barbarian and hitting an enemy so hard I cleaved its head off and threw it straight into the screen. That was a big wow moment. Wizards disintegrates enemies, leaving only ashes to scatter to the wind. PoE could improve upon that. Chaos skills, while good for damage, depending on the league, are the biggest offender when it comes to death animations in PoE. Whether it's Toxic Rain, Scourge Arrow, Caustic Ground, Drain Essence, Contagion, etc., all of these skills have one thing in common. They make it look like all of your enemies died of boredom watching you channeling the skills or recasting them, which is not so good. I loved my Toxic Rain builds. Big shout out here to Big Ducks for making them, as I was definitely not clever enough to devise them on my own, but the death animations made me feel like the blossoms were actually lulling my enemies to sleep. GGG could have made something like a rotting death animation for chaos skills or something else. I'm just providing suggestions here, just trying to be constructive, you know? Now let's talk a bit about skill gems. Skill gems are actually the things that give your characters, well, skills. And they add a great layer of complexity to the game. Learning about skill and support gems is great, and making a 12-link cast on crit cast when you fart on death portal builds is cool and requires some know-how, although a 6-linked skill is the standard, for which you need a ton or 1 orb of fusing. Many skills in the game feel cool. Take Cyclone for example, which is a fan favorite, and it has been for a while, even though it's been nerfed in the ground. There's nothing like turning yourself into a meat, bone, ghost blender and making blood juice extract out of your enemies, or linking the skill to cast on crit and freezing and breaking the enemies into ice cubes for the aforementioned blood juice you've previously made. The next thing to talk about is boss mechanics. They are often cool and challenging. You start a fight, and a minute into it, BAM! Death orbs, lasers, dragons, and your mother-in-law complaining how you're not good enough for her daughter. Gotta level up your emotional damage suppression, and armor, and elemental resists, and whatever other defensive layer you got. And after that, your energy shield guards your mana, and chaos damage bypasses energy shield, and oh dear lord! Just kidding. But there are mechanics like this, and for some builds, you do need to learn how they work. These are the best parts of the game though. You are rewarded for making a great build. Once you make it, you feel like Goku having trained in the hyperbolic time chamber for 50 years, but it's only actually been 70 years of in-game time. No wonder Ziz's hair looks like he started going grey. First he was Super Saiyan Blue, and now he's almost mastered Ultra Instinct. Meanwhile, I'm just standing in Twitch chat, watching him like Krillin trying to figure out what the hell is going on and if there is even a fight going on. The visual representation of the game is great. The global illumination they added to the game particularly stands out, as skills and auras emit light, which makes for a great atmosphere, as well as making it look good, as if you're having a rave party, which is so good that everyone present except you dies from awesomeness overload. The game is free to play to a certain degree. It's more like a demo for me, because without a map tab, you're screwed, unless you have OCD, in which case you can color code them and fill your stash tabs with only maps, which will happen pretty damn fast without the map tab. Then again, you can't even color code them, as this is a feature only premium stash tabs have. You're also going to have a really hard time listing items for sale without a premium tab, as only these can link your items to the trade site. There is a great variety of league mechanics in the game. If you don't like delving, you don't have to do it. You can go into heists, or do blight maps instead, or metamorph, or delirium. There's a wide array of different league mechanics you can do. And what's truly awesome is that you pick which mechanics appear and which ones don't. Now, the changes made to the endgame, meaning maps, are in my opinion the best they've been so far. You gain points to spend on a skill tree designed for maps. Yes, here you have a skill tree for characters and a skill tree for maps. And you can select which mechanics you want to appear and which can't do so. You can also affect the chances of a certain league mechanic appearing and the amount of loot drop and other things as well. Truly a play your way game. Starting a new build always feels exciting, because you just cannot wait to see what new kind of gory spectacle the new build is capable of, or how many shapers, Ciruses, Mavens, potatoes, pies per gallon you can do. Sorry, I'm not good with imperial measurements. How many kilometers are in a shaper? When I first saw the skill tree, I immediately cried and quit. Then I couldn't stop thinking of the possibilities. What could be made out of all those skills? So I did what any other masochist would do. I returned to the game and started installing every tool I could find, primarily Path of Building or POB, and watching build guides and mechanic explanations. It's definitely intimidating when you first see it, but it's also the best part of the game. If you have enough free time to invest, the game will reward you for it. This is a double-edged sword though for the game, because on one hand it feels great to master, on the other it absolutely does not respect your time. It's like a girlfriend you spend all your waking hours with, yet she still gets insecure when you drift away in your dreams for not being there for her. And that was it for the good. Now let's talk a bit about the bad, which are things I wish would be improved upon. So the first thing is, you're supposed to learn how to craft items, even though getting exalted orbs is hard for new players, so min-maxing is almost impossible unless you are a veteran player. First couple of leagues will be difficult for beginners unless you're smarter than me, which is very likely. One other thing when it comes to exalted orbs, a huge issue for me when I started was I was supposed to learn crafting by using the exalted orbs, which I knew were rare and I could use for trading for better items. So instead of learning how to craft, I traded, which I also sucked at because, as I said, I didn't know what was good and what was bad. I didn't know how to price items. I know there are websites like Craft of Exile where you can emulate the way an exalted orb behaves, which is a nice thing, but I just think it would be a nice addition to the game if they added something like a training room. For example, there is such a mechanic in Warframe where you can go into a training room and you can slap on whatever mods you like, test out the weapons and skills. You can even set the mobs to just stand still while you blast at them, so that you can see if what you had in mind works or not. That would be a good way to test out exalted orbs and crafting within Path of Exile. Which brings me to Harvest, the league mechanic everybody loved and GGG hated and is afraid of. Now, I just want to say that when it comes to my opinion, giving us a good way to make builds is a great thing. I won't stop playing your game just because I've maxed out my build. It's just one build. I want to make another one, and another, and another. Different playstyles are a good incentive for me to keep playing, and there is a plethora of different playstyles in PoE. It's just difficult to make them all. You don't have the time. And if it keeps going this way, I'll only be able to do one build per league, and the league is over, because I just can't afford to no-life the game. That just feels bad, man. I never made that Flicker Strike epilepsy-inducing build that I've always wanted. Yes, it's a meme build, but the idea of just zooming and teleporting from one enemy to another to second to 20th to 50th, Dragon Ball style, is just so cool, even if it's just for laughs, and I would really enjoy making it the best it can be. Now, I don't know if I'm alone when saying this. I know Chris said it once, and I just want to say that he is wrong. I'm not here just for the loot. The story matters to me. And I believe it could have and should have been improved with cinematics and rewrites where they are needed in order to provide us with more of an incentive to actually hate and fight the enemies. Maybe we want revenge for them stealing our loaf of bread or something. But just even more, like with Dominus who exiled us and stuff like that. Just keep going, keep giving us better villains. Cirrus was interesting, story-wise. And this is where Diablo was better for me. Diablo has a strong and defined story in which your motivation is quite clear. Kill the devil. And there are other supporting characters which I personally loved. Tyrael, of course, being one of the most prominent characters. And I even liked Imperius, who, even though an arrogant bastard, is kind of an interesting character, even though he only appeared for a really short time. And let's not forget the stay a while and listen, Deckard Cain. So see, all memorable characters, and this is where I find Path of Exile a bit lacking. Now I just want to say that I am aware that there is a divide between some fans of Diablo and some fans of PoE, but I do like both games, and I think it's fair to compare them, because after all, if there never was a Diablo, there would have never been a Path of Exile. And I believe that these two games and developers could learn a lot from one another. Though they should never be the same thing, because variety is key, and both games, speaking for myself, I play both games for very different reasons. Path of Exile I like for the challenge, Diablo I like for the casual gameplay, the ease of play. The next bad thing is that sometimes investing in maps can feel unrewarding. And boy, did I pick a good time to say that one, given with what's going on with Lake of Kalandra and how disappointed many people feel. But I won't be talking much about that because this is an overall game review. So sometimes you invest your alchemy orbs, your chisels, you reroll a map with chaos orbs, you put in the scarabs, you set up the skill tree for the map, you do every bloody thing imaginable, and still you get a dud. Which just sometimes feels like, oh come on. Just come on. So it would be nice if you could at least get a pity exalted orb. Just like GGG going and saying to you, here, for your trouble, and tossing it to you. But it is what it is. And for the last part, the labyrinth. The labyrinth just feels tedious. Getting randomly killed by traps is boring and happens because you get bored doing the lab for the nth time. I mean, there's only so many times I can hold my focus walking through the same streets, walking through the same aisles, avoiding the same traps, the same spikes and saws and stuff. It's just so boring. It would be nice if GGG implemented some kind of a mechanic that allows us to bypass the lab. For example, they could have us do the labyrinth on our first league run, and on every other consecutive run, there is something that we can do to bypass it, or skip to Izaro straight, or have a token drop from some boss or something. Just give us something to bypass the labyrinth. It's just boring. I don't die there because I'm too weak, I die there because I get too bored, I just can't wait for the experience to be over with. And sadly, now we come to the ugly, which is where I mostly want to talk about microtransactions. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that Path of Exile is a free-to-play modeled game, and that the microtransactions are their primary source of income. So it is understandable that you should at least give them some money if you enjoy the game, but I believe that the microtransactions in PoE are just too damn expensive. If you want to learn more about why I think microtransactions are too expensive and do a deeper dive with me, please click in the link which I will leave down in the description, and let's explore together microtransactions. Is it okay? For now, I just want to say that there are other very successful games which also have a free-to-play model, and yet their pricing is far more reasonable and a lot fairer to the customer. And I think that the cosmetic items in PoE, while beautiful, are just priced unreasonably high. For example, in Warframe, you get a much bigger bang for your buck. And Warframe is a successful game, going on strong. Well, not as strong, but strong. Now, the next part I want to talk about is that the game is easy to learn to an extent, and very, very hard to master, unless you know-life it and get a PhD from Zizaran University. Now, this is maybe just me, but I wish there was a casual league for players who are like me who just don't have as much time. Because we have Hardcore League, which is for hardcore players who like the challenge of permadeath and starting over, but let's be real, they make a tiny percentage of the total player base. I have nothing against them. It's good that they have their own league, they have something they like. Softcore League is for people like me, although is it really? Because the Softcore League still requires a lot of my time, and I have a job, I have a family, I have to do other things in my life, and the league is time limited. I have 3 months. In those 3 months, at best, I can do one build, and I can't min-max it. That's just too much time. To grind out the gear, to grind out the currency, it's too much time. So I wish there was an easy mode league, if you want to call it, or a filthy casual league, whatever you like. For us other players who are big fans of the game, who really love it and want to enjoy it and keep on playing it, but where the drops would be more forgiving, or the enemies don't have to be as forgiving, but the drops could be more plentiful. And as a penalty for us playing the filthy casual league, you could, for example, not count our progress or success in PoE Ninja or something like that as a punishment for us. Anything. I would accept any compromise in which I would be allowed to play the game within those 3 months and manage to make more than 1 or 2 builds. Because I really love making the builds. For me, that's the best part. The game is kinda, sorta, but not really pay to win. It is pay to win in the sense that if you don't at least buy a map tab, you're screwed. Unless you want to keep your maps in your stash tabs like a hoarder keeps old newspapers in their garage and living room. And finally, I want to say that it seems that the unique and regular items were intentionally designed to mismatch with each other, to clash in design and look poor in order to incentivize us to buy microtransactions. Now, as many psychologists will tell you, humans are visual beings, and if you don't look cool, you don't feel cool. Now here people always like to make the argument, you don't have to buy the microtransactions, they're just cosmetics. And they are right, they do make a fair point, but I would like to say that on the other hand, I also don't have to buy suits for work, but if I dress like an idiot with a sneaker on one foot and a flip-flop on the other, mismatch my socks, put on my wife's skirt and a neon green shirt, do I look good? Do I make a good first impression? I mean, I do, but that's just because I'm just that cool. So I don't have to wear a suit with a matching pair of shoes, but then why do we all do it? We don't have to. It's because we want to look and feel good when we go out, and improve our chances at making a good first impression on other people we meet, whether they be colleagues, romantic interests, potential friends, etc. In conclusion, this game is great for anyone with the time to master it. There's a great variety of mechanics, enemies, skills, classes. There are many different layers of complexity in the game. Now, if you want to sell your soul, don't. Try Path of Exile. It's more fun and more punishing than dealings with Lucifer himself. Speaking as a casual player, this is not a game for a casual player. If you don't make a lot of time for it by ignoring most of your friends and family, or your job, or your basic needs like eating, going to the bathroom and other stuff, this game is probably not designed for you. If you haven't, try the game and hate me for it later. All jokes aside now, when the League is good, I give it a solid 9,000 out of 10. When the League is in its absolute worst, I give it a 6,500 out of 10,000. The MTX and stash tabs being the biggest issues for me, followed by the time requirement and enemy death animations. Now you guys tell me, am I wrong? Are there some of you who are casual players, yet you've managed to reach the Ultra Instinct levels of Mathel, Ziz, Ziggy D, Cute Dog, Don the Crown? And also tell me, what are your favorite, no longer viable builds in Path of Exile? So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. If you didn't, give it a like. Subscribe, share, and meet me down in the comments below. And I will see you next time, Enlightened Ones.